I just want to say a big welcome. Hello. So my name's Gabby. I'm the Education Manager for ISCD. And on behalf of ISCD, I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's webinar. It's called The Perceptions of Colour. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Now, for those who don't know much about ISCD, we founded the school. Well, I didn't, not we, it wasn't me. It was a lady by the name of Prue Royal, and she started the school, oh goodness, over 37 years ago. So as a testament to Prue's hard work and dedication, the business is still going, and after almost 40 years, we're still leaders of education in colour and design. So it's pretty amazing to think that the schools, had that longevity, which is awesome. ISCD run 2 courses. So we have our certificate in interior decoration, and we also have our diploma in interior design. And then we also have 3 short courses that we offer, which is styling essentials, colour essentials, and surface design essentials. And we have Lee here who's going to take you through a bit more of that a bit later. So say hi, Lee.
Hi, guys. I'm a National Enrolment Advisor for ISCD. So if you are interested in studying a course, it would be me who you speak with. This evening, I'm going to be manning the live chat, which is going to be no mean feat because there are a lot of you. But I'll be on the live chat and collecting questions that you have to ask Andrea. So if you have something that you would like to ask her, please make sure that your chat is toggled where it says to. Please press everyone so everybody can see your question, and then we won't kind of have double ups of questions as well. Please type your question in, and yeah, we'll collect them. We won't answer them in the live chat. We will feed them to Andrea once she's finished her presentation. She has 2 presentations on various topics. So we're going to kind of have her doing a presentation, then live chat, questions that you've asked, then another part of a presentation, and then questions again. So that's kind of the format of what we'll be doing. If there is an inundation of questions and we can't quite get to all of them, fear not. Your questions will be answered in communications following up on this webinar, and you'll have a recording of the session as well. Okay, so I think that's all I need to speak about. So I'm going to go off camera now. Is that all right?
No worries, Lee. Thank you. Awesome. So now the fun part. I'd like you to meet Andrea. So Andrea is our lovely guest speaker tonight from Dulux, and we're very excited to have you on here. And thank you so much for coming along.
Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. So Andrea is the Colour Planning and Communications Manager at Dulux. Have I got that right?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. All right. So you're presenting tonight the latest trends in colour and interior design architecture, and also some little bit of technical stuff, and also how colours applied to spaces.
Right. Yes, wonderful. That's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
A little bit of everything colour-wise, and hopefully everyone gets something out of it. I'm sure they will. So I suppose, that's where this Q&A really comes into the fore as well. So if there's any questions as we're going through, please, pop something in the chat line. Hopefully we'll get it to you today. If not, we will be answering the questions over the next few days, and you'll get communication directly from ISCD with my answer. So don't feel afraid, guys. Anything is a good question, and hopefully I'll be able to give you a really good answer.
Fantastic. Well, I am going to go off now because I want to hear all about your presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to you now, Andrea. So
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to have to change the direction of my display. So just bear with me to do that. No, I can't find it. Sorry. So I'm just trying to work out how to, can you actually see, actually what I'll do is I'll put it on now. Now, do I have to change the display setting?
Okay, let's have
Can
a
you
look.
see my presenter screen or not?
You just, it's not presenting as such, it's still in the draft version.
How about now?
Perfect.
Oh, lovely. All right, perfect. Thank you, guys. Sorry. It's always fun doing this online, isn't it? Well, welcome everyone to the colour training. I'm going to take you just on a little summary through just some of the things that we talk through at Dulux in regards to basic colour knowledge. Colour is such an amazing tool, as we all know, you know, whether it's in the clothes that we wear, whether it's in our homes and interiors, but anything we really buy, often colour is a very imperative part of that product design. So with colour, obviously it's a transformation tool. You know, colour is one of the most transformational tools, and in paint, it's obviously one of the most, or one of the least expensive tools you can use as well. It's the power, it has the power to transform, not only from a mood perspective, atmosphere, the perception of space, but also it adds to the quality of living and also that emotive connection, which is so important, especially after we've lived 2 years in our homes. So it can really help solve bad design as well. So from a perception, and really give you that feeling of space, or that feeling of, you know, that coziness. And obviously, you know, by understanding colour and how we can effectively use it in an outcome, so in someone's home or someone's office or someone's retail space, it really is important to understand the part of the science, so lighting, undertones, and many other aspects that we'll be talking about today. So this particular image you'll see on screen now is a really lovely photo shoot that we did, oh gosh, probably 8 years ago now. And it was just done in the same studio space. But what we wanted to convey is, you know, doing one room, these are the same rooms, obviously same aspect. They were shot at the same time. And all we did was we changed a few little elements of styling, but ultimately it's the colour that sets the difference. So on the left-hand side, you have the colour terrace white, which is a really lovely white with that sort of greige undertone. Very light, very spacious, you know, really, I suppose from most people that would use colour, they would use this sort of combination of a greige or a beige or a white with a white trim. On the right-hand side, we have something very opposite, so the opposite on the scale. So we have something quite extreme in moodiness. It would give you that sort of cozy feel in that darker colour, and it would be very alluring. So once again, once you get into that space, it would make you sort of stay longer as well. So you know, one space, but two completely different feels, and that is that trend to use. So what we're going to go through today is really simply the dimensions of colour, and these are all things that a lot of you would already understand, I'd say. So the dimensions of colour, we have hue, which is simply just hue, colour, another word for colour. We have the tonal value, so the lightness or the darkness of the colour. We also have chroma, and what chroma really is just the vibrancy of the colour. So that you often hear terms like clean colour or saturated colour, and it's just really that brightness or that sort of vivid brightness of colour. We'll also talk about colour temperature, and that is simply whether it sits on the cool side of the spectrum or the warm side of the spectrum. That's really important when you're dealing with clients in particular, because often that's one area they might understand what they actually prefer. So it's a very easy question to ask people or show you what they like. We'll look at colour combinations, we'll look at undertones and lighting, and undertones and lighting are probably the two most important things when it comes to colour perception. So simply, you know, when we're looking at colour, obviously, you know, starting from the very beginning, we have our primary colours of yellow, red and blue. We have our secondary of orange, green and indigo, but importantly in colour, from a paint perspective, tertiary colours and also shading, so black, white and grey, are all very, very important because obviously paint is a tinted product. So we have lots of different pigments to make up one colour. So really important area. Tonal is something, or tone we use a lot when it comes to paint. So just simply, tone is brightness or darkness of colour. And if you were to look at the Dulux Colour Atlas on our website, you'll notice that all of our colour spectrum is done in columns. And when you look at that column, at the very bottom is the darkest perception, and at the very top is the lightest part of that colour hue. Now, obviously, the lighter you go, the more spacious. You know, we saw that when we saw those two images at the very beginning of my presentation. And obviously, the darker you go, it will give you mood and drama and just a completely different feel. The other good thing about using different tones is it can add form or shape to an object, and often we use it as little tricks in design. So it can alter that perception of a form. So if you had a long linear space, you know, we recently did our one of our conference rooms at our head office in Clayton in Victoria. And in this space, it's a long, narrow space. It's got one whole wall of windows pretty much facing north. Now, this was very dated, the colours, so we really wanted to update it into something very modern, but very sort of nondescript, so something that wasn't going to polarize. So we painted it in a Dulux colour called Black Caviar, which is a beautiful dark charcoal at the two short ends. And then the long end, we just had Snowy Mountains Half, which is a white. So the good thing about that is, remember, one side was facing north and that was predominantly windows. So we had that length of the space in the lightness still. So it still gave you that light. But where both of our TV screens or LED screens were on these short walls either side of the room. And obviously they had the Black Caviar, that dark charcoal on them. And what it makes it feel when in that space, it's not as long and it makes it feel more square. Not that we're changing it, we haven't done anything to the physical space, but it just gives you that sense of a change of perception of space. So there's those little tricks that can really help when we're using tones. Reduced chroma we use a lot. Now in our atlas, and unfortunately I can't show it to you on screen at the moment, but when you look at our atlas, whether you're online or whether you've got a physical atlas, what you'll see is the reduced chroma are always on the center of the page. They always are around where our binding ring is. So wherever you are, and this is really important when you're dealing with clients, often in Australia, in particular in Australia, we use reduced chroma colours. We don't tend to use a lot of high chroma colours. It's just not our sort of cultural perspective. It's also not in our lifestyle, in our homes. So you'll find that where the majority of people sit is always in that centre around that binding ring in any of the pages of the atlas. And that just means when it says reduced chroma, it just means it's got a lot more black in it. Simply, that's all it means. So it just means it's not as bright and vivid. So when we're looking at colour temperature, it is simply just whether it sits on the warm side of the spectrum or the cool side of the spectrum. And obviously all colours have warm and cool variants. So when we associate colour around the warmth, we always think about sunshine and fire and, you know, lots of, I suppose, that feeling of warmth as well, you know, like something that's inviting and welcoming. And on the cool side, we always associate it with water. So obviously ocean, sea, blue skies, importantly, and also shade. So on the cooler scale, you know, there's no right or wrong here. Clients will always have their preferred sort of taste, if you like. It's not something that we can push on them. It's something that they inherently will have. The easiest way to draw out people's likes and dislikes is show them imagery. And whether that's imagery you already have or imagery that you've sourced from Pinterest or House or any of the brands, you know, obviously the Dulux website has a great gallery as well. But importantly, when people see visual images, they really understand what you're talking about. So straight away, showing them two images, one warm, one cool, they go, oh, actually, I really like the red image. I'm drawn to that. straight away you'll know that is their sort of palette to start off with. And it also halves the amount of colour that you've got to look at. So it's a really great tool to sort of split the 50% if you like. When we're looking at scheming, you know, it is a complex area. Obviously, we understand that a lot of people see colour differently, and we can't always be on the site. So often now, especially in this online world, if we're doing scheming online, you know, they might be talking something that you can't see. And this is really, really hard. And even like when we have to work in our retailer outlets sometimes to deal with, you know, direct consumers. And it's really fascinating when you ask people, what way does your home face? You know, if you've got a lounge room, do you get morning sun? Do you get, half the time people don't even know. So it's a really hard area. If you can physically be there, obviously it's a much easier process. But understanding where the aspect is really important to how that colour will be perceived. So when we're looking at scheming, obviously monochromatic is our #1 area of scheming. And that is a scheme using any single hue, but varying the levels of tone and or chroma. So staying in that one colour family, if you like. This is just an example we did a few years ago for a nursery shoot. You can see, you know, we've just done a little mural there with the blues. You know, all of those blues are obviously a different shades or tone. So when we're looking at this, you know, from the atlas, you would be going maybe across 2 or 3 columns and just choosing between dark and the lightness. So the top of the page and the bottom of the page. The other thing we talk about monochromatic now, and officially it's not really monochromatic, it's more achromatic, but most people, most consumers in particular, don't know what that means. So everything gets sort of poured under this category of monochromatic. Now, this is an image that we did for Forecast about 4 or 5 years ago. We've used terrace white on the left wall, Friday gum on the right wall, and the colour down the end of the hallway there is Mornington Half. Now, these are really beautiful, subtle colours. You can get that sense of that soothing sort of feel in this colourways. So really relaxed and calm. So this was another Forecast image that we did about 10 years ago now. And this was a beautiful old Victorian place in Richmond, in Victoria. And this particular space, the clients that we were actually working with in this home, they wanted to keep the colour. So it was made it a lot harder in some ways because we had to make sure that they were happy with it. But the idea of looking into a space and using colour to draw you in is so important, not only for photography, but even when you're living in a home, because obviously if it draws you in, you're going to see that whole space. So in this particular case with this dining space, we really wanted to highlight that beautiful proper pendant. That was a very key part of Forecast at that time. So we used domino in the background and the foreground is in the colour hammock. So really beautiful contrasting colourways. Now, obviously, when we're talking about anything contrasting, you obviously can look on your colour wheel as well and see what is complementary, what's opposite on that colour wheel, because that's another important thing. We see these colours often in nature, so people are a lot more, I suppose, adapt or understanding of how these colours work because they see them more in nature, so they're going to be more receptive to using them in their home as well. Let's talk about whites and neutrals, because this is an area that all of you will have a lot to do with. This is a very big part of our interior design community in Australia in particular. So when we're talking about true neutral, it's simply a hue without a colour. Now, paint does not fall into that category at all. A neutral from a paint perspective is really one of a wide range of whites, beiges, greys, browns, greys, you name it. There's so many in that neutral space. And this is such a huge main wall colour area. So really important. So this becomes sort of like the pivotal start of our scheming. Now, the important part of whenever you're looking at a neutral is understanding what the undertone is. And to understand what an undertone is, you really have to look at the mass colour. So what is that mass colour, which is that predominant colour that you first see? And then when you're looking at that, you normally see that quickly or from afar. But then when you start to look at it properly, you start to see the hint of another colour coming through, and that is obviously called the undertone. Now, this does change depending on light, depending on surrounding colour. So obviously, if you're looking at a colour at the start of the day versus the end of the day, that will change as well. So it's incredible, and not everyone sees the same undertone. That's another thing too. So you have to, when you're working with a client, you need to make sure that they actually are, they're understanding what you're trying to get at about undertones, and they're telling you what they see. That's a really important part, because there's nothing worse than you've put all this effort into helping someone with their design. You've left the specification there. You know, when they actually physically paint, you get the phone call to say, I'm not happy because it looks too pink or it looks too blue, whatever it is. So it's really important for the client that you're working with to understand what that undertone is and that they see it. So let's have a look at the warm and cool side of these neutrals as well, because not only does it work with full spectrum colour, but also in these neutrals, we still have that warmer undertone and we have the cooler undertone. And the key is with this is to show imagery once again. So on the left here, we have white duck, which is a really beautiful neutral colour, which has a slight greenish undertone. And on the right, we have this beautiful charcoal called Fair Oaks from the greys page of the atlas. In some light, it can have like this beautiful striking olive undertone, olive green undertone. But literally that same day, this was taken in the morning, this particular shot with easterly sun. By the afternoon, that was charcoal. You couldn't see much of the green at all. So it is important, obviously, for you to really explain that to your clients as well. So just as interior, it's just as important, if not more important, to look at undertones when it comes to exterior as well. So we still get the warm and the cool side of these neutrals, but once again, you know, we're dealing with a lot more abundance of light. So therefore, the more abundance of light means we have more difference in colour perception as well. So once again, so important to see the physical colour externally, and often I say that to people, you know, when you're dealing with clients and colour, always try and make sure you're showing them the largest possible spots you can and on the surface that it's going to. So if it's an exterior building, you're outside, not in direct sunlight, by the way, but you're sort of under a shadow or something like that so they can see the truer colour. And, you know, for them to really get their understanding around that colour, they need to leave it there for 2 to 3 days to really get the sense of how that colour changes when the sun's going over, you know, when it's in more shade, when it's in direct sun, you know, on a dull day or a sunny, bright, sunny day. It all will change the perception of how you view that colour. The other thing that we look at, obviously, in undertones is from the warm side, we have many different undertones. We have that red or pinkish undertone in the warm, those sort of beiges. We can also have a yellow or orange undertone and also a green. On the cool side, in the greys in particular, you can have a bluish inference. You can also have that purple or mauve. And often with greys, you hear people say, oh, I can sort of see it's a bit mauve. You know, it's a really common thing with greys. And often that is, it's just got a little bit of red in it. And that can obviously bring that mauve undertone through. Now, green obviously can work in both undertones in both the warm and the cool side of neutrals, depending on how much yellow is in that as well. And of course, whites can have all of these, which makes it even more complex to understand. So how do we work around this? So obviously comparing colours is so, so important. You know, by comparing colour, it's just the best way, and showing them when you're comparing, you know, and you can use it against the white. You can choose 3 or 4 neutrals together, so that shows them the undertones together as well. You can look at complementary colours, you know, opposite on the colour wheel. You can look against pure white. Our pure white is vivid white. Obviously looking at other colours in the scheme, but also using our tint formulation. So we're not like KFC. We actually do, our tint formulations are no secret. So you can read or go on our chat line on the website and actually get the actual tint formulation of every colour from Dulux. And that will just give you a bit more of an informed decision on, whether there's more red than it is blue, or there's more, yellow in it than red. So it can make, I suppose, for those really pedantic clients, it can make you a much more informed decision on what way you go with colour. And obviously using the atlas, and I can't tell you how much I use the atlas. I use it every day, day in, day out. I find it the most fabulous tool, but you also have the digital version of the atlas online free of charge. And when you have actually gone out, you've finished your college diploma or certificate or what have you, and you've got your own business number, ABN number, you can actually get free A4 samples from Dulux as well from our website. So, tips, using light swatches, I said before, will help you recognise those undertones. Also looking at fixed materials, because obviously we can't change those, but we can work with those undertones. It's so important when you're dealing with kitchens and bathrooms, things like your laminates or your stone that you might be using. It might even be externally, like working with ColourBond colours. It might be working with brick or paving colours. You have to understand all of those undertones, because obviously a colour scheme is an entirety. It's not just paint colour on its own. It has to work with a lot of other materials as well. Obviously checking lighting is a big thing with colour perception and bringing out those undertones. An easy way to create a scheme is keeping those undertones the same. So remember how I said to you before in the atlas, it's all done by column. So if you stay in that same column, you're keeping the undertones the same on any of those spectrum pages. Leveraging complementary colours, so opposite on the colour wheel, and also varying tonal levels and finish. And a simple thing here is your client might love natural white, but they really want a simple colour scheme. You could do something like do natural white and gloss on the trim work, and that would actually be perceived as a lighter colour, even though it's the same colour. But as soon as you put a gloss on that natural white, it will automatically look a little bit lighter because of obviously higher light reflectance as well on that gloss. So in summary, obviously this is such a complex area, but it's one of the most important areas when you're scheming, and that is understanding and identifying and making sure your customer or your client that you're working with also understands the undertones involved in these colours, and comparing them is the best way. So lighting, obviously to perceive colour, we have to have light. We have obviously our natural lighting, and we also have artificial light, and both of those impact how we view colour. So aspect is a very important part of the lighting, what direction a room or our external facade might face. Eastern light is that strong morning light, which had that yellow inference. The northern light is our best light from a neutrality perspective, so it is our most neutral light. Our southern light has that sort of cool bluish undertone as well. And you'll find often people say that the room might feel a bit cool, it might feel a bit drab or flat. Often you hear that in discussion when they're talking about a particular room facing the southern side. The western light is that beautiful strong end of the daylight in almost that orange-red light. So for exteriors, obviously, as I mentioned before, the lighting levels are so much greater outside. In a standard room on the interior, you're talking about 400 to 500 lux levels. For the exterior, on a bright sunny day, you're talking up to 10,000 lux levels. So the difference of light obviously impacts greatly how that colour is viewed. This is a great example that we have here underneath this veranda. You can see on the posts on the veranda there. We've got a colour called Dulux Columbia, which is a really beautiful sort of greyish brown. Now this colour, as soon as you see that direct light, it almost looks like two completely different colours. You can see it under the shadow and you can see the truer colour, and then you go further down halfway on that post where the direct light hits, and you can just see how much it washes that colour out. And this is what obviously we have to make sure that our clients are understanding that is what's going to happen. It's the same with inside. It doesn't have the same intensity, but it certainly has a powerful difference as well. So this is an old Dulux colour called Chalk USA, which is a really warm sort of yellowish white. You can see the truest colour where it sits next to that window there, next to the glass. And as you move into the space, you can see on the left-hand side, we've sort of put the colorways of what actually we're perceiving that color as. So as we work up from the bottom, you can see where in that hallway there, it doesn't get a lot of light, but it's getting a lot of reflection from that floor, that sort of honeyed timber floor. And it almost looks like a tan color. Then we move up towards the top part of the wall where it's getting artificial lighting in that hallway, and it almost becomes a caramel. And then we've got that diffuse light. You'll never get direct light on ceilings unless they're an angled ceiling. You'll only ever get diffuse light. So once again, it will have a completely different angle and you won't get that true light reflectance. So this diffuse light here looks almost sort of brownish, if you like. And above that, on that mezzanine floor, it almost looks greyish as you're moving away from the light. And where there's no light penetrating up above to the top left, it's almost black. So that one colour of Chalk USA actually looks like 6 different colours. So it's unbelievable. This is a great slide to explain to yourselves and also to help your clients understand how colour is affected by surrounded colour. So if we just really concentrate on those centre squares, so on the left-hand side with the yellow background, you've got almost like a jade green. Now, I know all of your screens will be different because obviously we haven't all calibrated the same level of colour, but it will still give you the same indication. So on the left, we've got more like a bluey green, and on the right, it's more a cleaner green. So there is a definite difference between those. But when I hit enter on my colour, you'll see they're exactly the same colour. So the only difference that we're seeing is that effect of surrounding colour to how we perceive that centre square. The same thing on this particular colour here. We've got on the left there, we've got that beautiful violet, which is quite a clean violet. You know, it's quite a beautiful sort of striking violet. On the right with the blue background, it's a much more subdued pink, quite a soft pink actually. But when we see them together, you'll see they're exactly the same colour. So it is purely that surrounding colour that is changing the way that we see that colour. As per colour, it's the same with shading. So this is a really simple example of if you concentrate on that inner circle on all of those 5 blocks there, you'll see on the very first block to the left, we've got the darkest background. And you can see the circle is really standing out. It's quite contrasting. You can see it really easily. It makes that circle look quite light. As we go to the far right, you'll see the lighter background and look at that circle and it looks quite dark as opposed to that very first circle. But when we see them together in a line, you'll see it's exactly the same shade. So it's purely that background depth of shade or tone, if you like. That is what's affecting that surrounding colour, and that's what we're perceiving. I love this one from a shadowing perspective. So if we look at square A and B, and they obviously look like a checkerboard. So the A is the darker part of the checkerboard and the B is the lighter part. But when we actually click enter and see the colours together, you'll see because B is in shadow, it is actually the same colour. So once again, our colour perception is completely thrown because of that shadowing casting that different colorways across that, or the different sort of shading across that board. So we have some great go-to colors at Dulux, but, you know, ultimately there's so many whites. I mean, you know, we have so many different undertones in our whites, but our number one white by far is definitely natural white because it is sort of our most neutral white. And it's a white that goes with just about anything. It's a really great bridging color. There's complexities, obviously, when you deal with anything to do with brick or stone or paving, you know, anything that's sort of those natural products, you know, stone in particular, because obviously it fits both interior and exterior. You can have feature stone, and, you know, all of those will automatically have their own undertones. So you need to work with the undertones of that dominant brick or paver or stone that you're working with. So it's a really important thing to see it if you can in the same light. If you can't, obviously you'll just have to understand the aspect where this home is being built and look at the aspect accordingly. We have a lot of tools at Dulux to help along the way. Obviously, we have our brochures, which are more based towards consumers, but you can certainly access those. Sample plots are fantastic to show clients, as well as our A4 samples. Both really great. Anything that can give people a larger perspective of colour will help you identify more undertone and just give you a general better indicator of whether you like the colour or not. Obviously, there's a lot of information on our website, but especially the gallery is a fantastic thing to show your clients, just to get them understanding, and you understanding where their likes and dislikes are as well. I think that's a really important thing. Often people will know their dislikes, but won't know what they like. So sometimes it's almost even easier to understand what they don't like first. The other thing, the atlas, I said to you, you've got free access to that online under the professional tab. Have a look at it, have a play with it, have a look at how it's all sort of laid out. All of the most popular pages, like our whites and our naturals and our neutrals, etc., our greys, are all on the very front pages of the atlas. And then from page 1 to 49, then all you have is your full spectrum. So going from starting at the reds and working right back into those sort of beautiful violets. So 1 to page 49, all of those pages are laid out in exactly the same way. So always the lighter shade at the top, darker shade at the bottom, and obviously the most chromatic to the right side or the far left side of the pages. And as you enter the center, as I said, those chromatic, those beautiful muted colors are always in the center part of the atlas. As soon as you see these online, you will actually get a really good indicator of that layout. And obviously we have fan decks, which are just a subset of the atlas as well. All of our colors come from that atlas. They're just a smaller amount. You would have seen these in your local Bunnings or Mitre 10 stores, or even the Dulux Trade Centre. This is just a subset, once again, of the atlas, but they're great for you to show clients larger chips of whites if you don't have access to the A4s as well, but also just to give you a smaller view of that full colour spectrum. So that is our colour training. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. And hopefully we have some questions coming through.
Hello, I'm back. And yes, we do. We have loads of questions for you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and they're really good ones. So our first question comes from Linda, and she asks, she says, there's conflicting advice about the use of dark colours. So for example, black in rooms. Is it true that painting a room with a dark colour will make the room feel smaller?
Look, it's not conflicting, because I think that's just nature's way, because it's not going to get the same light reflectance in a darker colour. It will always make it feel a little bit smaller, absolutely. But sometimes that's what you want. So sometimes if people are suggesting to you that they want a really cosy, room that they feel really sort of secure and safe at night, and all of those words give you that indicator that they want something that's dark and moody, and that gives them that feeling as well. So whereas if they say to you, I want something that's light and spacious, and obviously to go towards those lighter colours. There's no right or wrong here. It's about understanding what your client really wants the outcome to be.
Yeah, sure. For every space, it'll be a different answer, won't it?
Absolutely.
So from Annette, we have a question on white. There's a couple of questions about white, as you can imagine. What are some tips and tricks to choosing white when there are so many choices? How do we do this? How do we navigate it?
I think I mentioned on that undertone slide is comparing. That is the only way. So understanding whether people are more attuned to the cooler side of the spectrum or the warmer side, that will help. Once you start that initial question and you have that answer, and then you can start comparing all of the warm whites against each other or all of the cool whites against each other, because obviously they all have their own undertones. Some of them will be like quite stark, in the cooler side, and then they might be a little bit greyish, or they might be a little bit bluish, or On the warm side, they might have a slight sort of yellowish or ochre undertone, or might be a little bit pinkish. So all of those will be identified when you start to work with your client, when they have other materials to show you as well. It might be their favourite sofa or their artwork that they're working with, if it's an existing home, or if it's a new home or a new kitchen or bathroom. It will be all of those materials that you're building up to actually make that whole space that draw out those undertones as well. So you've really got, if they're spending, you know, $40,000 on a new kitchen, really that's what needs to shine. You know, it's those materials that need to shine, and the paint will just need to work with whatever those undertones are.
Right. It's so complex. I had no idea that, you know, there was so much to choosing a white.
Absolutely.
Stephanie asks, if you want to darken your ceiling, what do you have to consider in terms of picking a colour, particularly black?
Look, we've seen plenty of this done in our Dulux Colour Awards in particular. We see coloured ceilings quite often. You've just got to understand that obviously you've got to have to do black on the ceiling, there's two things you have to be mindful of. One of them is the plasterboard has to be in really good condition, because the darker it is, the more you will see imperfection.
Oh.
That's one thing. So remember that on ceilings, often we have a lot more plaster joints as well. The other thing to consider is it will make the room feel like the ceiling is lower. If it's an old home and you have really high ceilings and you want that sense of something really different, it's a wonderful way to use colour, because it doesn't overwhelm the space. That is one thing that we do notice when we see, you know, really neutral sort of wall colours and then have something really dominant and powerful on the ceiling. And years ago, it was done all the time. In the 70s and the 60s, it was a really common thing to have coloured ceilings. But from sort of the 80s onwards, we started going white, and we've sort of never headed back. But we've seen some fantastic examples of how it really works.
Another question, and we're back to white again. We're going between black and white here. Another question on white, and it is basically, are there any tips with white on white? Will that come back to the earlier question about tips and tricks for choosing whites? Same kind of.
Definitely, yeah. So it's putting, you know, 2 or 3 whites against each other. Once you do that, you can actually see the undertone coming through. So when you put through, and unfortunately, if I was in person, I could physically show you the chips, but it's just too hard on a computer to see those nuances. But what you'll see is, you know, one might have an undertone of a sort of a greyish undertone next to something that might have a bit more of an ochre, next to something that actually brings out a bit of pink. And you'll see that dominant. You will see that when you start comparing the colours together.
An interesting question from Chrissy. She asks, is there a best time of the day to see the undertones in the colours?
No, but there is a best aspect, and that is facing north. So if you do have any north facing spaces, or you can buy daylight tubes in fluoro and at specialty stores, like Philips make a physical daylight tube. And that's what we have in our conference rooms and our studio. But definitely facing that aspect of north will give you the most accurate colour. But that is not reality, because not every room faces north. So you still have to understand how that colour will interact in every space. And there's no reason why you can't use, you know, say if you want to use a cooler white on the north side of the home, but then on the south facing side change to a natural white, say, because you're not going to notice that big difference between shifting colour. But what it will make it do is not feel as drab on that cooler side.
Could you also use this with the strengths? You've got quarter strength, half strength, full strength. That also has an impact too, doesn't it, Andrea?
Absolutely. And that is just about how much light is in the space as well. So often what people will do is they might use like natural white on the walls, but they'll use natural white half for the ceiling. So because they want it still in the same sort of light, you know, warmth and everything, but they just want it a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Priscilla, and we're still on the topic of light.
Yes.
but this time extreme light. Priscilla lives in Western Australia, and she's asking if she's planning to paint the exterior of her house. Her house is in extreme sunlight. She wants to know, do the paints fade after time?
So if it depends on the colour, so it just like Mother Nature tells you that red and yellow will always fade faster than any other colour. That is just natural science. But if you're going for sort of mid-tone to light shades, especially like on main walls, they're not going to fade significantly. And a lot of the Dulux tints, so Dulux have got their own tint system. So ours is unique to Dulux. We have actually done it all in our labs, and they actually are manufactured by Dulux, whereas a lot of other companies use other shelf brands for tinting. And with ours, quite a bit, oh gosh, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, we came out with they're called Chromamat spaces, and at the same time we had these new tinters invented in Australia from our labs, and that was that these tinters fade at the same rate, because the issue with fade is that often one colour will fade much, much faster than another colour, and that's where you start to see the differences. Especially in Melbourne, there was we call it Jeff's, when you come up the Tullamarine Freeway, which is from the airport, there's these big sort of iconic installations, and they're just like sculptural installations, and one was always this bold yellow, unbelievable. And when they first put it in, they didn't use Dulux, and it faded so fast. Within the first sort of 12 months to 2 years, it was really like washed out. And there was also another iconic displayed very closely in red, and it was unbelievable. Just some of them and different sides were fading at different rates as well, you know, where they were facing north versus south. Obviously it was a different fade rate, whereas ours they're much more stable with our tinters. So our tinters have been made for our UV environment and our climate and our weather. So basically they will still fade. That's science. It will always do that for reds and yellows, but they'll fade at a similar rate. And it just means that you don't see those differences over time like you would with a lot of other colours. Now, when it comes to whites and all of those mid, to light colours, and especially in the neutrals, the colour fade is very, very minimal.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question before we move on to the second part of the presentation.
Yep.
I'm going to go with a question which is a bit more industry related rather than colour related. It comes from Gabby, and the question is, we have a few questions regarding collateral that have actually popped up in the chat. So this could actually answer a few people's questions at once.
Oh, great.
Could you please, Andrea, explain the process for ordering fan decks, the Atlas, A4 brush outs, etc.? What is the minimum you would recommend starting out when doing a colour consult for a client? And yeah, basically that we've been asked this a lot. So could you give some insight into that?
So at Dulux, we have a number of colour collateral tools. Our number one is the Atlas. And as I mentioned before, everything comes from the Atlas. So that's our largest tool that we have on offer, which has about over 4,800 colours. So more than you'll ever need to use. And then from there, we have a subset, which is about 2,800 colours in a fan deck. So it has still all of your whites, your neutrals, your greys, all of those main staple colours, but then it only has about half of those spectrum colours. So, the physical colour spectrum colours that we went through. So still a great tool, and especially a great tool when you're going out on site with a client, because you don't necessarily want to drag a huge atlas to someone's home, or out on site. It might be a commercial and you've got your hard hat and your safety boots on. So the fan decks come in very handy for that reason as well. Everything that we have is available on our online shop. So if you go to the professional area on the Dulux website, dulux.com.au, and you can actually purchase these tools. And obviously they are, if you have an ABN, they are a tax, you can claim them against tax as well. They become a business expense. We do have the Atlas online if people just want to use that initially, but also if you have an ABN, so you're just about to go out to your own business, you're getting your ABN together, you can actually access our free A4 collateral online as well. So everything in that Atlas has an A4 sample, and you can order up to 30 in one order. So fantastic. Our Colour Centre does an amazing job. It's been doing this for over 35 years, probably even 40 years now. And it is just such a great service to our specified community, because it just helps you when you're putting up your mood boards for clients. It helps them perceive colour much better in those larger swatches as well. It's a really important part of our business.
Thank you so much for answering all of our questions. We're very happy and excited to move on to the next section of your presentation. I can't believe how much I'm learning. It's insane. I'm going to actually rewatch this whole thing.
That was good.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm leaving you to it. Let's go, Gabby.
Okay, now I've just got to work out.
So the next part of the prezzo is colour trends, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've just lost you for a sec. Hang on a sec.
Right. I'll keep talking to you while you get on.
Yes, please do.
That's all right.
Because I've just got to work out my presenter view, which is very important.
Yeah. I did a colour consult the other week, and I ordered the brush outs, and they're just so quick to come too, which is really good, because the collateral's just, the service is great. So
it is a fantastic service, and it really, it's just so helpful to, as your business, in being able to help customers quickly understand, where those undertones are, and just get a really good idea of how that colour will be displayed in their space as well. Now, I'm assuming I have to change that display setting again.
That looks good.
It's perfect now.
Oh, perfect. Oh, love it when it works. Awesome. All right, well, this is a very different presentation to the first one. So this is a lot more fun, and, well, not that the other one wasn't fun. I'm sure it was fun, but this is a bit more light and airy, I suppose. This is more around our colour forecast and where colour's going. So this is the colours for 2022. Now, when we do colour forecasts, we look at many facets, and some of those things are things that we've seen in media. It might be things that we're seeing from the fashion catwalks, if you like. Certainly it has impacts from macro trends, so what's happening politically, what's happening on the world scale, from, obviously from anything from the Ukraine-Russian sort of war at the moment, but also things like natural disasters. All of these things have impact on colour and where design heads. So we look at many macro trends and micro trends. We analyse them, and obviously we bring them back to Australia, because not everything that we see overseas, in particular in Europe, will actually manifest itself and work in our particular lifestyle or our cultural fit. So this is sort of how we conjure up the colours from the forecast. So it is a lot of research, a lot of delving, and a lot of collating information, predominantly from Western Europe. And then what we do is we put our filter on for Australia and New Zealand to ensure that these colours will actually work in our market. So obviously for Colour Forecast 2022, I'm going to take you on a little journey through a video first, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a feel on what the forecast is for 2022. So obviously the world has changed, and we've had to change along with it. And as we gradually have emerged from this another difficult year, we look to find more positive meaning in all that we've endured. There's still a sense of uncertainty about what the future may hold, and for this reason we crave comfort and reassurance in our homes. Across the country, we have all been affected in many different ways. And of course, the appreciation for the importance of good design is just paramount now, to really surround ourselves with things that are not only just beautiful, but will also enhance our well-being and our quality of life. So I'm just going to take you on a little journey through a very short video, and then I'll go into more detail. Okay, so there we have our little snippet of our colour forecast for 2022. So I would like to introduce 3 palettes. So the Dulux colour forecast of 2022 comprises of 3 exciting palettes drawn from our earth surroundings that feature rich earthy tones and natural textures alongside joyful summery hues that awaken our zest for life. So our first palette is Restore. So as we emerge from a time of pause, we reevaluate our lives and consider what is really essential. We recognise the need for clarity and calm and look to simplify the spaces that we occupy. We desire less, but in some ways more quality products, and not always from a monetary sense. Sustainability is key. We are prepared to pay for more for pieces that are responsibly made and that will last. Comfort is the priority when it comes to decorating our spaces. So the Restore palette consists of gentle earth-based neutrals alongside more rugged natural tones. These colours recede and they don't demand attention. However, instead they soothe our senses and provide the reassuring backdrop which allows us to readjust to constant change. Furniture is chunky and comforting with curves that follow the lines of the body, accessorised with simple handmade and crafted decor pieces in interesting and often imperfect shapes. Detailing throughout is kept to a minimum with the focus firmly on form and function. So just to give you a bit of a feel here, we have some great examples this is from, a lot of these are from the Mix magazine, from Colour Hive, and a lot of these really show you the beautiful level of texture in a lot of these images here. So texture was a really key part of this particular theme. So when we look at Restore, just a couple of examples on the screen here. So that bottom left, that beautiful chair, that's the Philip Malone DS707 chair for Dessert. Malone has created this curvaceous design by first using foam sheets, and the result is a combination of postmodern graphic style with influences of brutalism. And just the image on the bottom right there is the Sundays collection from Paola Sacca. It's been created by clay formed inside delicately sewn molds made with fabrics textiles. After the clay dries, the fabric is meticulously stripped off the piece, leaving behind its beautiful textured print and supple shape. And of course, each piece is unique. So looking at the colours here, we have very earth-based palette. Starting from the very beginning, we have that beautiful warm white with rice crop and stowe white, and of course, our gorgeous warm white in hog bristle half, into our greys of winter terrace and tranquil retreat, our tan in open only double, that beautiful sort of red brown in new penny, our charcoal Obi d'Amore, and that's got that gorgeous purple undertone, our greens of natural flora and Finnegan, and of course our charcoals in black caviar and fairy. When we look at some of the imagery, we have used Brie Leach, who's our amazing Dulux colour stylist. Now, Brie chose this particular home because of its sort of modern, very clean lines. And then using these colours, obviously, we've really been able to bring out that amazing sense of texture. So beautifully heavy textured rug. We've got the black caviar in the background and that beautiful open only double as the main colour. But you can see the texture really sings in this shot. On the left there, we have the rice crop as our main colour. And what you'll see there is we've just got that beautiful Finnegan just on the joinery there. The middle image is Tranquil Retreat in the bedroom. What I love about Tranquil Retreat is it's a fantastic grade to use because it works just as well with the warm palette as it does with the cool palette. You'll see fairy on that backdrop on the bathroom wall, but also in the foreground, Brie has chosen beautiful warm colours in that bed linen, but also in the tan of the bed head as well. So you can see it works just as well in the cool palette as it does with the warm. So it's a great bridging grade as well. On the right there, we have that beautiful new penny, and we have paired that with a warm white in stowe white. It's really important when you're using colours with that browner undertone that you need to use warmer whites. If you were to use Lexicon or Lexicon Quarter or something here, it would be too stark and would bring the blue out. So that undertone would really come through. Obviously, it's opposing against that red with that brown undertone. On the left where we have that gorgeous hog bristle half in the bedroom. It's a really complex colour. It's got quite a number of tints in that particular colour. It has red, it has ochre, and it has black. So sometimes it can look a little bit green, but sometimes it can look a little bit ochre or yellowish, but sometimes it can even look a little bit pink as well. Middle image, you have that beautiful winter terrace, and that is with natural flora in that green as our feature colour. On the right there, once again, just a close-up version of Finnegan on the joinery. You can see how much it really highlights that beautiful natural stone. We have a winter terrace. This is a gorgeous image. I love this. It just looks so surreal. It looks, you know, so inviting and so beautifully sort of styled with lots and lots of texture. You just can see yourself warming up there on a cold day with your favourite book and maybe a glass of wine. So when we look at the images here, we have incorporated powder coatings as well into this palette, but you can get a sense of this very earth-based colour palette. This is a really natural colour palette that anyone would feel really confident in using in most spaces, whether it's residentially or in a commercial setting. Our next palette is Flourish. Let me take you on a little journey through Flourish. So the traditional accepted norms no longer seem relevant in today's world, which has us looking to innovate old processes. Breaking away from the past brings with it a sense of liberation, awakening a desire to live more boldly, travel further, and experience everything life has to offer. At the same time, we feel empowered as a community, celebrating diversity and inclusivity, and taking a collective pride and mindset in making it through challenging times. Here's where we can all be inventive and rewrite design rules. Interiors are laid, expressive, and unapologetically individual, with decadent fabrics such as velvet, silk, and natural leather, paired with one-off vintage finds such as a quirky 60s lamp or an authentic 40s mirror. The exaggerated curves in sofas and general seating evokes the 70s disco vibe, with additions such as marble and oxidized metals adding to a luxurious and thoroughly modern edge. So just to give you a couple of examples here in our beautiful mood board, you can see the soft finishes here straight away with the silks and the beautiful velvets. You know, lots of really beautiful, luxurious finishes from a textural perspective. You know, touch is such an important part of our senses, and that was something that we were really neglected of and deprived of over the last couple of years. So it's a really important part of interior design. So a couple of examples on our board here. We have the cow chair on the top left-hand side, the chair that almost looks like it can stand up and run away. I love this chair. It's from designed by Angela Darman, and it was created to draw attention to artisan craftsmanship and form a bridge between light and dark, and a transformation from the usual to the unexpected. The middle left image down the bottom there, that beautiful blue rug, the cast tall palette rug, that's been designed to represent the artist palette in tantalizing colours and suggestive shades. And this particular rug and all of their colourways are all beautiful combinations of colour. Really, really lovely display of the way that they do use their colours together. So when we look at our colours in Flourish, you can see they're still quite muted. There's not a lot of really bright colours here. There's definitely more colour than our Restore palette, but there's still some beautiful, subtle sort of muted tones as well. So starting from the very beginning, we have our beautiful warm white in White June Quarter into our warm neutrals of clay pipe half, bongo drum, and basic coral. Our Discretion, which is our red with that brown undertone. We go into our red terror, which has that beautiful orange red undertone, into our browns of Murray red and deep leather, a touch of gold in gold vintage, our blues in Kenapuru Sound, Benang, and Dark Door. And here, what Brie has done here is just magnificent. You know, the warmth that she's brought in here to this beautiful dining room space, and also the undertones of that gorgeous stone in that gorgeous dining setting. You can see how these colours just work so beautifully together. So here we've used basic coral as the main colour in the dining space, and then on the outside wall there you'll see in the hallway in clay pipe half. So once again, marrying those beautiful warm tones together. On the left here we have the Kenapuru Sound as our blue. I absolutely adore this image. And of course, just that touch of gold on that chimney breast in the gold vintage, which really is a beautiful contrast. The middle image there is Dark Door, and you'll see when you're using these particular darker colours to receive, often it's important to actually use the receding colour also on the trim work. If we were to change that window into a white, the difference would be incredible. Like all of a sudden that window would then start to be in focus again. Whereas here we wanted to really highlight that beautiful striped chair and really have the colour receding behind in that backdrop. On the right there, we've used Benang, and Bree's brought in those beautiful reds as a complete contrast there to really highlight that gorgeous blue, which is almost like a petrol blue. On the left there, we have basic coral in the bedroom, and you'll see all of the beautiful scallop better, you know, lots of curvature in here and those soft touch textures as well, really important in that particular space. The middle image there shows the importance once again of that receding colour, but the highlight of the gold. So whenever you're doing any design, whether it's for a residential property or commercial, often you need to understand what is it that you're trying to make the most of. What's the focal point in that space? Now, for this case, it was that gold sofa. It was a really key piece in that space. So we wanted the colour to actually recede and that to be really highlighted in that beautiful gold. The right highlights when you're using hue on hue. So we've obviously used Kenapuru sound as that backdrop behind that beautiful sofa. And the sofa works so well because of the amazing texture and obviously the button upholstery as well. So we've got really amazing 3D texture. If that was a flat texture or no texture, it would just blend into the wall. So you've got to think about when you're using hue on hue, it can be done really beautifully like it has been done here, but also you can camouflage things very easily. So there is a fine line that you've got to balance. Once again, you'll see this receding colour, and you can really see here, I love this image because if you were to put your hand over that gold sofa and you see everything sort of just sits back, as soon as you take your hand away, the gold, your focal point goes directly to where that yellow hits the wall. And it even makes that red painting stand out even that little bit more as well. So once again, that focal point, you know, understanding at the very onset of your planning, what is that focus going to be in that space is so critical. When we look at colour, once again, you know, we have a little bit of a majority of warm colours here, but certainly a balance of a few cool colours as well. And, you know, lots of beautiful warm neutrals to go with those deeper, darker tones as well. But lots of muted colour. It's amazing the difference it makes by bringing muted colour in, just to sort of add depth and interest and just something a little bit new. Our last palette is Wonder, and this is a really fun palette. So as we emerge from much time indoors, there's a real sense of a reawakening and a celebration as we prepare to connect with family and friends and, of course, our old lives. This is a time for regeneration and personal progression. Nature grounds us as we are prepared to take those first tentative steps into our new future. This is a new celebration and acknowledgement of what joy and inspiration we can discover. The Wonder palette reflects our desire to be less serious and welcome fun back into our lives. Colours are playful, summery and 80s inspired. Unexpected combinations emphasise the whimsical nature of this look. Think about quaint florals used with eclectic colour and checks paired with sleek contemporary furniture. Needlepoint cushions and fluted glass or woven rattan furniture set against a wall of candy stripes. Furniture is sustainably sourced, handed down or made from recycled materials, underpinning the belief that we all share in the wonders of our beautiful planet with a hopeful vision. So let's have a look at the mood board. So here you can see it's about joy, it's being a little bit frivolous, it's not taking ourselves too seriously. No, this is about positivity, absolutely. And you'll see there's a sense of almost like those beautiful mid-tone pastels as well, which are really joyous colours. So a couple of examples on this mood board. The bottom left image, the ceramic there, is the Vassal hand-painted ceramics designed by French designer Lazana. And of course, during London's long lockdown, as a way to make mealtimes more fun and whimsical, she made these beautiful colourways in ceramics because she wanted to hide the fact she was such a terrible cook to her family. I love that because I totally feel for her. I'm in the same boat, unfortunately. The other really great, beautiful inspiration story is Parboy. So the beautiful purple and yellow cushion there on the right in the centre is In Casa by Parboy. Bojang, who was a refugee from Gambia, was seeking asylum in Italy. he created these bold designs whilst frustrated in lockdown. His signature style gained him attention on Instagram, and this has led to a very successful business venture. So fantastic outcome, obviously, of a very dire, time in Italy at that time. So when we look at the colours here, you can see the joy and the fun in these colours. So we had to do a clean white here in our vivid white, which is just our perfect purest white, because we've used so many pastels in this. And that's something, when you are using cleaner colour, you really do need to use a cleaner white or a cool white. We go into our pinks of pinkham and pink papaya, our golden ochres of sassy sandpaper and ice lemon, our greens of celery green and equatorial forest, the blues in harmonious, Edvard and plunder. And of course, one of our key colours is Pax, which is that beautiful soft lilac. I love this image, it just sells serene, doesn't it? You look at this and you just feel serenity and peace, and it's just such a beautiful, calming space. This is Pax on the walls and vivid white on the windows. The image on the right is sassy. Colour is sassy by name and sassy by nature. This is a chameleon colour. It changes so dramatically between light and shadow. If you were to see this in full light, it would almost sort of have more of an orange sort of tan appeal, but in real shadow, it can almost look like a brownish sort of, a brown with that sort of orange undertone. So quite different in visual perception between being in shadow and full light. On the left there, we have that beautiful pinkham, and Bree wanted to bring in a bit of fun with a candy stripe on the bottom of the bench seat there in equatorial forest and vivid white. The middle image just focuses on Edvard in the background, and in the foreground, you've got that beautiful blue in plunder on the rattan table, and Pax is on that beautiful ceramic bowl with the flowers. The right there, we have in the bedroom that celery green. This is such a flexible and adaptable colour. I love this green. It's soft, it's light, but it's still got a lot of life in it. So it has great light reflectance, has that really beautiful sort of spacious, cool feel, but at the same time, it feels quite neutral in itself as well. It's a really great colour. On the left there, we transformed this white weatherboard into this beautiful oasis in harmonious. The middle image, we had a bit of fun with a mock or a faux dado rail with pink papaya on the bottom and vivid white on the top, and just in the ceiling, we've got the candy stripes in ice lemon and vivid white. On the right, this was a real transformation of a very dark, sort of cool white room into this beautiful golden glow of sandpaper. It's amazing the difference bringing in those warmer tones into south-facing rooms. I rarely use cool whites in particular in south-facing rooms. They can just look a little bit drab and dull. I love this space. This is a really joyous space to be in. This is Edvard on the wall and vivid white on that fireplace there and ceiling. But lots of fun. You can see Bree's really had a good time bringing lots of colour and, lots of finishes, obviously, in the furnishings and accessories. So from a colour perspective, it's a bit of a balance between the warm scale and the cool scale on the spectrum. I love how you can do a scheme. You could just use one colour on its own. You could actually use two colours together. We could use celery green with equatorial forest. We wanted to go down that monochromatic sort of scale, but we could also do something really fun contrasting and use something like sassy with Edvard, to really sort of shake things up a little bit. So there we have the colour forecast. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully we have lots of questions again.
Hello, we're back.
Hello.
We don't have as many this time around, and I think it's just because of your very comprehensive presentation. Like, it's really, really clear what you're presenting.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm just going to pitch two to you because we are getting to the pointy end of our evening.
Absolutely.
One of the questions is, what do you think are the best whites, or what is the best white for a ceiling colour? I guess you could give your own personal opinion on that.
Yes, it's a hard one because obviously it depends on whether you're using a cool palette or a warm palette. I mean, what I say to people is, if you're really not sure, often it's better to keep in the same tone. So if you were to use something like lexicon on the walls, you might want to use lexicon half or lexicon quarter on the ceilings. Then at least it still stays in that cooler spectrum of white. You're not changing it up too much. A lot of people use vivid white, which is simply our ceiling white, because it's just a great white. It's more purest white, and it goes with just about anything. But often now what people are doing is they're using like a half strength of the wall color. So even if they were going to use something like natural white on the walls or Snowy Mountains half or something, they might use Snowy Mountains quarter on the ceiling. So keep it once again in that same sort of undertone, if you like.
Right. Okay. And Grace has asked, she would like to ask you, Andrea, if the World of Colour fan deck for $40 will be available soon. The website.
Absolutely, it will. I can hand on heart tell you.
She says it says on the website it's been sold out and it has been months. So she would just like to know if that's, you know, in the pipeline.
Yes, unfortunately, we had a huge run on our collateral, as you would probably imagine, with COVID, because everyone was working from home and didn't have access to their full libraries in the office. So we had a massive push on collateral in the first part of 2020. And of course, we've obviously reordered, but in doing that, there's big issues logistically, as everyone knows, on a global scale. But they are on the water and they're on their way. So they should be here towards they were saying end of April, but I would suggest May. I'd definitely go back to the website in May and see whether they're available. I'm sure they will be.
Can I ask a quick curiosity question?
Yes.
I would like to know if there was any particular trend in colour during the really rough, nasty part of the lockdown when everybody went into DIY mode. Like, was there one of those palettes that was more popular than others?
Well, because this is 2022, in our 2021 palette, we did have a similar palette to Restore, which is very much in those earthy colours. Whenever times are rough, we always go back to brown as our base colour. So the last 10 years or last decade, prior to a couple of years ago, we had grey as our base stable. Everything had a grey base, you know, give or take a few different things, but often that's what you found. We noticed about 3 years ago, we started to see things warming up a little bit and the greys were getting more greyish. So they were going more towards that beige sort of scale with that browner undertone. And we certainly saw that come through much more strongly because brown is a security colour. Brown is earth, it's our grounding colour. So hence why everything warms up when times are, you know, obviously grim.
Fascinating, love it. Okay, we won't go through any more questions because we're running out of time, but I have a very quick couple of slides to present just on a few of the courses that we offer and some information. So I'll just share my screen quickly. Guys, stay with me, that's fine. Let me just get it up here and ready. Okay. Okay, guys, so can everyone see my screen? Can you see it? Yeah, great. Okay. There was a question that popped up in the chat. There were a couple of questions about courses that we offer. Some of the hobbyist courses that we offer, these are the ones which you would do if you kind of have an inkling that you're interested in design or, you know, interiors, but you're not quite sure you want to like commit to a longer course. We offer 3 short courses. One of them is in colour, which you probably would be interested in if you've been sitting here and listening to Andrea's amazing presentation. So we've got colour essentials, surface design essentials, and styling essentials. They're really quite light courses. They're lovely and easy to fit into, you know, your week. They require around 18 hours of your time to complete over a 6-week period. Currently, they're on sale at 40% discount off the price that you see, which is there. So cheaper than that, much cheaper. And that's actually on until the 31st of May. Great courses too, if you're working in industry and you may have some juniors who are working for you and kind of aren't, you know, they're probably, to use a colour, they might be a bit green and they need a little bit of help in explaining, you know, colors and the relationship between soft furnishings and lighting and things like this, well, these kind of courses can be quite helpful for that. We do also offer a certificate for interior decoration, and a diploma in design. That's a much longer conversation than I have time for right now. So if you wish to apply for one of the short courses, it's very simple. Please go to our website and do so if it floats your boat. If you want to chat about it, that's my name, that's my number. Call me. Very, very happy to have a chat with you. Okay, so this pretty much concludes our session for tonight. Please follow us. We love it when you do. We'll follow you back. So we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, and we're also on Pinterest. Now, for a little bit of a surprise for those of you who've stuck around till the very end, of which there are a lot of you still, you can win a Dulux Atlas.
This is an awesome prize. This is the best.
We didn't want to tell you at the start. We thought it'd be such a nice thing to leave until the end. Anyway, how can you win it? Well, what we've got is we've compiled a list of every question that got asked tonight, including those that, and Andrea didn't actually get to answer because we had many. So we had to cherry pick questions. But we've kept all of them, and Andrea is actually going to go through that list and pick what she thinks is the best question that was asked tonight from anyone. And that person will be the lucky recipient of a $300 value Dulux Atlas. And I believe I might need Ash's help on this one. The winner is going to be announced in the recordings. Is that right? Ash, can you jump on for a second?
Yes, indeed. So it will go out in the follow-up email next week to everybody that attended, and we will let you know who the winner is.
Oh, thank
Fantastic.
you, Ash. Thank you. Okay, so that is it. So
yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Andrea. We've learnt so much about colour. It's insane.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always great to be able to talk about colour in a little bit, of a different way and in more detail, and just share my knowledge, because I'm so passionate about colour, and so many people use white today, and there's so many amazing options that give you much more connection to the space, and a bit of a more emotive sort of connection as well. So it's important to, I suppose, make sure that everyone understands that when you're using colour, it's not just from an aesthetic perspective. There is a lot when it comes to the way it makes you feel, and the way it makes you feel like it's your own. So that customization as well.
That's just another whole conversation, isn't it?
It is.
Psychology behind it.
So true. Thanks so much, Andrea. We really appreciate your time and coming in.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's been wonderful, from meeting you at Den Fair to, actually, getting you to come on board and speak with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Glad to be here, and glad to share my knowledge.
Thanks everybody for attending too. It was a really great turnout. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. I think
thanks everyone.
Everyone, enjoy your dinner.
Yeah, you too, guys.
Bye.
See you. Bye.